Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Grid Talk podcast. I hope you can hear me okay over my microphone, which I think has just suddenly changed settings. So just bear with me a second. Let's do that. There we go. That's probably much better. And alongside me, as always, we have Wajid. How are you, Wajid?
I'm good, thank you. I'm good, thank you. Will, thank you very much. Good morning to you. Good morning to you as well in the chat, and welcome to the Belgium Grand Prix review here on the Grid Talk podcast on the Motorsport Magpie channel.
What he said. Anyway, obviously we're going to get into the Grand Prix as a whole in a minute, but we are going to start with some news that has come out in the last 24 hours or so. First up, the news we were all kind of expecting. Carlos Sainz has signed a deal for 2025, 2026, and beyond, whatever that means. I don't know whether there's been like watching some movies for that title. I don't know, but
and beyond.
yeah, it's a bit of a strange one. But yeah, that's the case that they have. So I was just making sure we were live on other channels. Yeah, so Sites Williams, thoughts on that?
Kind of shows what his options were. That's one, but number two, James Vowles had been openly flirting with Carlos Sainz. Like, do you know the meme of the boy and the couple walking hand in hand, and the boy turns his head round to see the other girl walking by. That's what James Vowles essentially was doing. He had Logan Sargent part of the team. He saw Carlos Sainz available, and he's been openly flirting with Carlos Sainz about joining team and stuff. So James Vowles got his man, and it's probably very limited options for Carlos, wasn't it? He was never going to go back to Alpine, given the state of that team. Maybe the Audi project, this Audi Sauber project, isn't as glamorous as he first thought. And I mean, we'll get into Red Bull and that entire farce, and then it seems like the Mercedes seat was never an option for him. So, you know, it, yes, it's good he's still on the grid, I guess, but what options did he have?
Yeah, I completely agree with you in terms of the options he had. I mean, he was hanging around hoping for Mercedes, hoping for Red Bull chance, and they didn't fall his way, leaving him with Alpine, who's in complete disarray at the moment. And I still don't believe will be Alpine by the time 2026 comes around. You've got
They're going to be a Mercedes feeder team. That's what they're looking like.
you've got Audi, and you've got Williams. That's really his choices, and Audi are not looking like they're ready. To be fair, they don't seem to be coming up with too much at this moment in time. Sorry, I've got a reflection in my glasses. It's really
annoying. That's okay.
yeah,
sorry, just jump. So to add to the point of the Audi, people are comparing the Audi thing to when Lewis left. Lewis left McLaren for Mercedes. The thing with Mercedes is the Mercedes had a vision. They had a project.
Yeah.
They were bringing in their own. They were bringing in their own engine. Everything that was sold to Lewis was, look, we understand next year we're not going to be great, but when the regs changed, this is everything we had. And Lewis was given like a vision of a project. Obviously, it's probably it's one of the best decisions ever made in sort of Formula One in terms of what he's achieved afterwards. But like you said, with Audi, no one seems to know what's going on with Audi. No one seems to know if they're creating their own engines or they're buying engines. Even now with all the management structure fast there's been, they had Seidel in, and then all of a sudden, actually, no, we're replacing Seidel, and Seidel's going. Now we're bringing in Binotto. So for as much as there's this allure of, for as much as Formula One has wanted Audi and Volkswagen and whoever else in the sport, it just seems to be, it's just constant sort of disarray from these manufactured-based teams.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, the last time we had, off the top of my head, the last time we had a driver in a team from Audi, VW, Porsche, Skoda, Seat Group, whatever else, was probably the Porsche that was in the back of the Zach Speed, and that didn't exactly go well. Might have had it in the back of the Arrows when it went all right, but just thinking back, like 80s. But obviously they haven't built one for a long time, and it just doesn't make a huge amount of sense to take a risk when, be honest, right now, Seitz is probably driving some of the best drives in his career at times, and it's just, it makes zero sense. So Seitz going to a Williams could be a good move, whether Newey's going or not. Williams are on the up in terms of performances. They're more consistent now, if not peaking, shall we say. They can consistently fight for 9th and 10th place, maybe 8th, etc. And somebody of the talent of Carlos Sainz is certainly going to be good to bring in. You've got, you've also got Alex Albon staying alongside him. So could this possibly be? I don't want to call Williams a back team because they're not now. Sauber are, but could this be one of the best driver lineups we've seen for a while in a lower team?
I think so. And I think it's a very, very good test for where Alex Albon is, if he's been overdriving the Williams, or if Logan Sargent is just dog. So it's a very and to be honest, I think for both of them, in terms of Carlos making a step back from going from McLaren to Ferrari and now Williams, I think I think it'll be a very good test for both of them to see when a top team comes knocking, which one of them a top team takes. Because Albon's done a very good job at rebuilding his reputation at Williams. Williams gave him the chance, obviously, but now Albon's considered one of the toppish drivers after recovering, and because he came in, people forget the reputation he came into Formula One with in the first place. So, no, absolutely, you got a Grand Prix winner in Carlos Sainz. You got a potential Grand Prix winner in Alex Albon. If Williams give both of them a half decent car next year, there could be some really good results for Williams next year.
And the other thing I'd say with Carlos is a bit different to what Williams have had all year in Sargent for the past 2 years. Is you've got, and also in Latifi. I mean, obviously, I'm not putting them in the same bracket as driver caliber, but the retirements for Carlos Sainz in his career, so he's been through 5 different teams, is only 35 retirements out of 196 races, so about 18%. That's pretty good when you think he's driven for a McLaren. I mean, I'm just trying to have a look here in terms of
retirements. He was at Toro Rosso, then he was at Renault, then he was at McLaren, now he's at Ferrari.
And also, since 2017, through his Renault, back at Toro Rosso and Renault, because that was split, wasn't it? So, Renault, McLaren, Ferrari era, he's never finished outside the top 10 in the championship, only in his first 2 years of Toro Rosso, which is quite understandable. And his worst was 10th for Renault before he signed for McLaren. So, remember, McLaren weren't the force they are today. So, really good signing for Williams, and I hope this reignites some fire into the. I suppose having a race winner in the team will help that in the first place. But generally, a very consistent driver. An average finish this season, actually, for Carlos of 4th place. So,
and I think it's just again, point, it's a coup for Williams, isn't it? It's a statement that they're no longer, for the last decade plus, they've been. You don't expect much from Williams. They've been chilling at the back, just happy to be there. I think it's a statement of intent of where Williams want to go, want to head. They've got the funding. They have the funding. They've got James Vowles. And I think people need to keep their eye on Williams for, maybe not next year, but definitely for the regulation change in 2026.
Yeah, very true. We're now going to move on to the second piece of news, which has come out yesterday. I wouldn't say it's a confirmation, but it has been confirmed.
It is a confirmation.
I don't think it is, and I'll explain why in a minute. Sergio Perez will be staying in the Red Bull for the rest of the season. Now, I'm just having a look here because thank you to friend of the show, Ronald, sending me this website, which I never actually really knew existed. So it's very useful. Sergio Perez, 0 wins this year, obviously. He's the only one in the top teams not to win. His average finish is 6th when you think how dominant that car's been in the hands of Max. Average grid of almost 9th place. And what is even worse? 0 races led in that car. Sergio Perez has not led a lap. He may have led around the circuit, but he's not led a lap this season. Really not on 7th in World Championship, but Red Bull have decided to keep him. I'll allow you to have your thoughts first, Wajid.
I've been saying for months on this show, for as much as people were saying he's getting replaced, I have been saying for months they are not going to replace Checo because they are worried of the backlash at the Mexican Grand Prix. And lo and behold, they're not replacing Checo. For as much talk as there've been, people talking about, how ruthless, Red Bull used to be ruthless, etc., etc. No, they are scared of what the Mexican fans are going to do in Mexico. Simple as. I've been saying it and I stand on it, and I very smugly sit here being right again.
It is very true. It is one of them where it looks that way. But we went into Belgium thinking, Daniel Ricciardo, are you going to be replaced and out of Formula One, or are you going to be in Red Bull next weekend? Well, in a few weekends' time at Zandvoort. Neither seems to happen, and it looks like he'll stay in the RB. Personally, wrong decision. I do think Ricciardo will be better for them in terms of the team's championship. But I think maybe putting it second on the grid, even though he fell back, which obviously we'll get into in the next part of the podcast, I think Perez obviously gave them a little glimmer of hope. And obviously it doesn't upset the apple cart. It brings in the money. Like you say, it doesn't upset things for Mexico. But when we get to Mexico, if he's still not performing by Mexico, is that where you do the swap? Because you still got 5 or 6 races after Mexico.
Let me just check. So we go Holland, Italy, Azerbaijan, Singapore, United States, then Mexico. After Mexico, we've got Brazil, Las Vegas, Qatar, and Abu Dhabi. So there's only 4 races left after the Mexican GP.
Yeah, it's a wrong choice. Don't get me wrong. I don't think it's the right choice at all. But then my mind just goes, if that's the case, let's just take it's the case you get to Mexico, Sergio is not performing. Could you possibly just swap him over? Could you, just his final race at a Mexican Grand Prix? I also think if Perez wasn't under contract for next season, Red Bull could get rid of him without him being taken off the grid. Because I do think somebody like Audi would sniff around him very much. Big sponsorship money. Already got Hulkenberg. That's a pretty solid driver lineup of Perez and Hulkenberg for a midfield team to try and use the experience to move forward.
I think the problem from Mexico is the turnaround, because it's only a week between Mexico and Vegas. I think.
Yeah, it's all right. Danny Rick's already got his seat fitted anyway. You probably do. I mean, the way Danny Rick was walking around Belgium, it was like it was solved. Now, whether that was just you got the drive for the rest of the year, I don't know. But also, let's note this. Sergio Perez will stay in the team for the rest of 2025. 2024. There's no word that I saw mentioning next season.
That's exactly what the next point I was going to be, which is just because he signed that Red Bull contract doesn't mean because of that performance related clause in his contract. Even at the end of the season, they can still replace him because he's not hit the performance related points in his contract. So I think they'll see out the rest of the. I do think they'll see out the rest of the year with Checo, and I don't think he's going to be in that seat for 2025.
No, I completely agree with you there. Have Red Bull done this because they're sort of not satisfied, but in a position where they think they're going to lose Lawson? So he may go to Alpine, he may go to Sauber, that kind of thing. And Red Bull are going, okay, well, we've lost Lawson. So the only person we could chuck in there at a risk is Hajar. And we need somebody next to, let's say Ricciardo doesn't perform for the rest of the season. If he doesn't perform, they're not going to want to put him in Red Bull over Perez. So have Perez there as almost, this is how I put it, almost as if Max was going here.
I think the difference when it comes to Ricciardo, especially in the last couple of races, is Ricciardo's been screwed because of strategy. Ricciardo's not. Whereas at the start of the season, you could say Tsunoda was outperforming Danny Rick. Last 3 or 4 races, Belgium, he got points, but especially Hungary, he's been screwed because of strategy. He's comprehensively beaten Tsunoda. So, excuse me.
Yeah, but you have got to remember, Tsunoda gained 60 places on the opening lap in Belgium. And he started 78. He started 78, finished 18th. That's pretty impressive.
That is pretty impressive.
But anyway, that's just how Red Bull would probably look at it. We will get into these news topics a lot more as the summer goes on because we've got plenty of things ahead.
But now, for those who didn't watch the race, spoiler alert, and secondly, why are you on a review show if you didn't watch the race? But here we go. Yeah. The results from the Belgian Grand Prix.
And it is all correctly adapted, thanks to Wajid, because I'm still sorting things out on my end. George Russell lightens the load, literally. Right, George Russell won the Grand Prix, crossed the line first, and I don't think any of us can doubt it was a spectacular drive in terms of how he controlled the race. A lot of people coming out afterwards saying, yeah, we were going to one stop, but we didn't and all that. Well, you can come out and say it. You didn't do it. Whether Mercedes screwed Lewis over, we'll get into that soon enough. But George Russell drove... he needed this drive, didn't he? Whether it was disqualified or not, he needed this drive because he was getting well. And, okay, yes, Britain, he possibly could have won it. He was in contention, but Lewis was driving really well that day. In Belgium, Lewis was dominating the race. I know he wasn't charging into the distance, but he was controlling it. There wasn't a problem. It was all about track position for the first time ever in Belgium, which we'll definitely get into because it was almost the weirdest Belgian Grand Prix I think I've seen for a long time, and that includes the 2-lap race where George Russell finished second in Williams, which wasn't a race. But anyway.
Historically it was, though.
Historically it was, so we'll stick to historical stats. What was your thoughts on George Russell's race?
I think his strategy came out of... His strategy wasn't some... I'm not going to say it was a masterclass stroke that people are making out. It was desperation. It was mostly desperation that it eventually became, because the tires hung on so well, that looked really, really good. And obviously he won the race. But if he'd pitted, he would have ended up fifth because Max, I believe, got the undercut.
Yeah.
And the way the McLarens were cruising up to the back of everyone on that second stint, Norris probably would have taken him over. So he might have ended up sixth, to be all in all. It was a fantastic drive on the 30 plus lap tires. I think people's the data was totally off because I think because of the wet running there'd been on the Friday, so I don't think anyone had collected enough data. But when Lewis cruised up to the back of him with, I think, was it 4 or 5 laps ago, everyone expected, okay, cool, Lewis is going to cruise up to the back of him, overtake him. But those hard tires hung on really, really well. He was getting traction. He was getting perfect traction out of all the places he needed traction, which was out of turn one, out of Eau Rouge, and out of the long, out of the long straight to the bus stop. He did what he had to do. And it was a very for 2 hours anyway. It was a very, very, very good 1-2 for for the team. But the contrast between Russell and Lewis Hamilton on the podium was that was interesting.
Well, I think the problem for Lewis, and a lot of people have got to understand this, because I know there's been a lot of, oh, well, Mercedes screwed him over again, all this, that, whatever. Lewis didn't know that that's what George was doing. And they made George and the team pretty much made that decision before Lewis pitted, so for the second time. So I do think that discussion wasn't passed through.
Wait, but that's then wrong of the team, isn't it?
Yeah.
Right. So I can see why Lewis feels he's screwed, because there was an initial radio call by Lewis that says, what's it looking like? And that was in reference to Piastri, because Piastri was doing, I think he was doing 146s when everyone else was doing 147s. So yeah. Lewis thought he was in a race with Piastri. There wasn't a point up until Lewis cruised up to the back of George Russell where Bono came on the radio, said, you're free to race, that Lewis thought, I'm racing my teammate. Now, for me, again, if Lewis is told for 3 or 4 laps earlier that actually you're in a race with George Russell as well, then I think his mindset's different. As well. I'm totally not taking away from George's drive. It was an exquisite drive. Probably should have been driver of the day given where he started, where he finished. Obviously, he was disqualified. Yeah. But Mercedes aren't helping themselves with some of the decision calls they're making against Lewis, with Lewis, in terms of George and Lewis, and that email is looking. That email each passing week is looking more and more like there may be something to that, unfortunately.
Yeah, there does seem to be something. I mean, obviously, we understand that Lewis has announced he's leaving the team and he's going to be not privy to a lot of stuff. You know, we know that. But in terms of the actual racing, things have not been, since that Canada email, suspicion, whatever, something has changed inside the team. And George, fair play to him, made the call, said, I'm not going to pit, I'm going to stay on these, and drove away to what was, like you said, for a few hours, a brilliant victory. 1.5 kilos. Let's go on that next. A lot of speculation. I'm sorry. Let's go on the tyre speculation first. Yes, you do get a lot of pickup. Yes. Around Spa, you probably could pick up 1.5 kilos in tyre. But that's not the reason. Because they know they don't do it. They haven't done a slowdown lap in Belgium. Ever, I think. Not that I can think of. And I've watched since 97. So, literally since 97. And we didn't do one in 96, etc., etc. So, for me, that's not an excuse. It's 1.5 kilos. It sounds a little, but Lewis says you can lose 1.5 kilos in a race in terms of your own weight, things like that. So yes, the tire wear had something to do with it, but it won't have been all of it. And I don't know. It's one of these things that happens. It just happens. Maybe a part is slightly lighter than it was last time, and we didn't realize, or because each of these parts are made separately by machine, but it doesn't mean they're exactly perfectly. We've seen many times the driver have a different chassis, and all of a sudden it handles better, even though it's built in exactly the same way. So something just went amiss there, and I don't think there's any malice or let's run light on purpose.
There's no nefarious tactics to stop George. Because why? Because at the end of the day, like, Mercedes have cost themselves 18 points in the constructors. Like, why Mercedes going to screw themselves in the constructors when now it looks quite feasible that they can catch Ferrari for third place. I think it comes down to the Friday running, because everything was done in the wet. There was no dry running. No one had proper calculations. They also didn't expect George to one stop, which probably again threw off even more calculations because everyone was expecting the two stop. So there would have been extra tire wear. He was running in free air, so he couldn't save as much fuel as you would do sort of behind people. So there's a number of different factors. End of the day, Mercedes got it wrong. It's unfortunate that he doesn't get his third win. It's probably, to be honest, probably would have been his best win out of the sort of ones he had, out of those sort of the ones he had.
Yeah, in terms of the strategy, but in terms of driving, I think even though we've always said in Brazil, Lewis would have probably caught him, he did manage to hold off Lewis. So, and then Austria was just a little bit lucky in terms of what happened ahead. But you have to be right place, right time. And the man who was in the right place at the right time. And just to add as well, in terms of the conspiracy with Russells and stuff like that, every car, it's not like the inspection where they're taken apart. Every car is weighed at the end of the Grand Prix. So don't think they just picked because he's race winner and they didn't expect to win.
I saw some comments saying, well, if they weighed Lewis' car, then, Lewis would have been underweight. No, they weigh every single car. They have to, like, scrutiny, weighing is part of every single car. Other things, such as, like, checking the plank and stuff like that, that's randomly done. But the weight of every car is taken.
Yeah, so we'll move on to, hang on, we got that one. So we take that one off, we put that one on. 105 wins. New record by Lewis Hamilton, taken away from Lewis Hamilton. Nobody has ever won 2 races after the 300th Grand Prix. Lewis Hamilton was the first to do so, to take a win after his 300th Grand Prix. He's now took 2 after his 300th Grand Prix. I think all them calls of him being washed, replaced, he absolutely had that Belgian Grand Prix under full control, and he was going to win it at a counter, whatever. He wasn't even pushing, I don't think.
I don't think so either.
And he didn't need to.
You also missed Lewis Hamilton breaks the previous record of 200 podiums to 201 podiums.
Very true.
Previously held by
Lewis Hamilton.
His wins are like London buses. You wait, and all of a sudden 2 showing up at once. And triple back to back podium. It seems like that win at Silverstone has reignited and reinvigorated, and he's found his confidence. And I think people, all of us, have underestimated the dreaded AD21. So apologies for mentioning it, but I think a lot of it. I think everyone has sort of not taken into account just how much of a mental effect that's probably had on Lewis. And he had that wave of emotion at Silverstone, and this was just he did what he had to do. He finally got a good start. You have been mentioning for weeks his starts have been very poor. He got a very, very good start. So good that Checo didn't even expect him to be there, and Checo nearly drove into the side of him before turn one. He got ahead of Checo, and 3-4 laps, and then he 3-4 laps behind Leclerc, and then he just cruised up to the back of Leclerc and just drove past that Ferrari like it wasn't there. And from there, got the gap to 2.5 seconds, and totally controlled the pace, totally controlled the race, and no one was getting near, no one was getting near him at all. And if it, he's eventually got his 105th win, and if his teammate may have crossed the line first, but it was a Lewis-esque prime Mercedes driver as you get.
Yeah, very true. Just absolute, pure class up in front, just moving away, etc. And it's a strange one with Lewis, because he's come back, he's bounced back. George Russell turned around and said, well, if we were on this form earlier in the season or end of last season, Lewis wouldn't have gone to Ferrari, which proves that even George doesn't understand the true reason why Lewis has gone to Ferrari, because it's not all about performance. Because look where Ferraris were a few races ago, and he was still saying he was happy to get to Ferrari. So just, we've got to say it yet again, just proving he's still one of the best, or the best, whichever, it is disputable, isn't it, as we go along?
Unfortunately, we say it week after week after week that him and Max are the class of the field.
Yeah.
We've had backlash for it. Oh, a lot of Lewis is washed and stuff like that. But, we are now seeing, as Max Verstappen in machinery that's not 35 seconds up the road, how much he's now struggling to overtake, and the old Max has come back. You've given Lewis sort of potentially equal machinery to what the Red Bull is now, and look what you're getting. Yes, Max stuck it on pole, and who knows what would have happened if he started on pole of the race, but he didn't. He always takes engine penalties at Belgium.
Yeah.
Red Bull always take engine penalties at Belgium because they think they're gonna cruise past everyone, and this time it didn't happen. But as we mentioned, it makes the championship for third place really, really interesting, because there's only 27 points now between Leclerc in third and Lewis in sixth. So I'm gonna ask you: is there a chance this man can actually finish third in the world title?
No, I don't know. Right. Now, I've said all along there's a championship fight here. And
we'll get to that.
No, we're not getting to Lewis being in a championship fight. But do I think Lewis Hamilton could finish second in the points? He possibly could.
I said third. I didn't say second.
I'm saying second.
So
it all depends how everybody comes back to Zandvoort.
Are you officially saying the title fight is over?
No.
So you still think there's a title
fight?
I
still think there's a title fight. Right, this is how I've got to explain it, because this is not to do with any of our banners, so whatever. This is basically, we had a situation in Belgium which was so weird. DRS did nothing, unless you asked Van Ocon. That's the only person who we ever saw overtaking, apart from Lewis.
Or Oscar Piastri.
Well, yeah, he did one. Did he do one move I can think of to pass Leclerc? But Leclerc got passed by Lewis as well. It was only Ocon that we saw doing multiple overtakes, and we know why, because he was so little on downforce, which worked for him. 9th place, great result for Alpine, obviously, which we'll get into. Even if it did look like a Lewis Hamilton special edition monster can. But it's just one of them things that I think if it been any other race, Lando would have cruised past Max, and he probably would have cruised past Leclerc as well, and been on the podium. And then we're having a completely different conversation. But it was a Belgian Grand Prix with a lack of overtaking, which I don't mind. I'm not saying it's boring. It was a very good race. You know, we had 8 cars for the win, realistically. Okay.
7.
7.5. He did start near the front, so we'll give him credit.
No, 7. He went backwards.
So you had all them cars for a win. Nobody could overtake. The pace seemed to be controlled due to tyre wear, which was really weird because then we found out you could just push the tyres all the way anyway on the new tarmac. And just, I don't know, it was just a strange one. So I'm going to reserve my, have we got a championship fight? Yes, I still think we do. I mean, we have a look at the calendar. We go to Zandvoort, and then we go to Monza, then we go to Azerbaijan, and then Singapore. So I think that gives us 4 races.
Max is winning in Zandvoort.
Well, we've got Zandvoort. Max should win in Zandvoort, but remember how quick the Mercedes were when they were slow at Zandvoort. And also, there's a lot of quick corners at Zandvoort. The McLaren should suit it. So we could be in for a 3-team fight in Zandvoort.
There's no way. So, sorry. The problem with Zandvoort, and I don't know why we're doing a preview. But the problem with Zandvoort is the same problem they now have in Belgium, which is there's now too many bits on a Formula 1 car that's producing dirty air. So Ross Brawn, for your technical expert regulation expertise and all that, you're full of BS. Because we're back to the same thing, which is they can drive slightly closer. They can now drive 4/10, but we now got to the point where there's so many extra aerodynamic bits in the car, they're producing dirty air again.
I do agree, but I do think in the long term, I think we're definitely in a position where, as I say, Zandvoort, Italy, Mercedes might be out of it a little bit because of straight line speed. But then the historic Monza setup of sticking no wing on the car is no more, is it? Because you've got DRS. So many people actually run quite a bit of downforce to get through the corners, and then they worry about the DRS to use for overtaking. So there's so much you could do in terms of this championship changing, but I actually think we still have a championship. Let's get to, you say Max does win in Zandvoort. You've got Monza, which we just stated, very different. McLaren won there in 2019 with Daniel Ricciardo, or 2019. Was it 2020? One of the two. Anyway, Daniel Ricciardo won there and McLaren got a 1-2. We've seen different kind of races there. Then we go to Baku. We all know how crazy that can get. And then we go to Singapore. Well, Sykes put on a masterclass there last year. Mercedes should be pretty good around there with lower temperatures at night. So, yeah, Lewis is brilliant around there. We know he is. And Mercedes should have won it last year. Remember how quick they were?
Well, speaking of Mercedes, are they back?
I think they are. I think that it's a difficult one because obviously we've had 3 wins in 4 races. Everybody's like, yeah, okay, well, bored of this Mercedes dominance. But at the end of the day, like Silverstone, it wasn't a dominant win. Austria was a lucky win. This weekend, I think we can definitely say Mercedes were going to win that. If not, with Georgia, Lewis was going to win it anyway. So I think very much a position of Mercedes are back. But let's see how they do around somewhere like Zandvoort, around somewhere like Monza. Let's see if this is track specific with fast corners and stuff. Or are they in a position where they can now push for that, like you say, second in the championship? How far are they up in the constructors? Quite far back. So
they're 100 points behind McLaren in second.
Yeah, so it's quite a jump to try and get there. I don't think they're going to be winning the Constructors' Championship, but we think McLaren will probably challenge Red Bull. But then Ferrari aren't exactly out of it either. They're only, 21 points behind McLaren. So, if we're saying Mercedes are in that fight, we could have a four-way fight here in terms of race victories for the rest of the season. And going into 2025, wow. I mean, what a battle we could have when everybody starts back on zero. As I say, in terms of the Drivers' Championship, Lewis is on 150, George 116. Now, as much as Mercedes may hate to admit this, if Lewis Hamilton starts getting more results like he did in Belgium, let's say he wins in Zandvoort, let's say he wins at Singapore, George Russell's going to have to start going, hang on a minute, we need to get this Mercedes as high as we can. And they're going to have to start backing Lewis Hamilton again, which is going to feel slightly awkward.
If Max and say Leclerc or Lando have a DNF in Zandvoort and Lewis wins, then you're right. Then Toto, for as much as it's gonna hurt him and burn him on the inside, because I feel this year they've done everything possible to try and push George Russell. Yes, he's had a DNF and he did win in Belgium, but since that email has come out, Lewis has won two of the last three, been on the podium 3 times, and he's now got a 34-point lead over George Russell in the championship.
Well, just having a look at it, just to jump in there with Lewis. Hang on, that's the wrong way around. It's right. I just looked and he finished third, second. No, that's 2017. No, that was 2007. Sorry, it's the wrong way around. Since let's say Monaco wasn't great down in 7th, but he got fastest lap. Canada 4th, fastest lap. 3rd in Spain, 4th in Austria, 1st in Britain, 3rd in Hungary, 1st in Belgium. Again, Hungary possibly could have competed for the win. Austria got stuck behind sights.
And he damaged his floor.
Yeah, and he damaged his floor. Spain, where he's on podium there. Canada was certainly a drive he could have got back in there. Imola 6th. So he hasn't been outside the top 6 since, except for Monaco, since China when he was 9th. And when you think his start of the season was 3 ninth places, a 7th and a DNF, he's bounced back hugely.
Absolutely. But there might be some really awkward if any of the top 2 or 3 in the championship end up with a DNF and Lewis goes on to win that race or score heavily in that race, then there needs to be awkward conversations about George Russell playing second fiddle driver.
Yeah.
But moving on. 4 for the win. We have touched base about it, but McLaren, Mercedes, Red Bull, and Ferrari. We are now in a position in Formula One, and as always, once everyone gets back together, the regulations change. So 2026, can't wait for the dominant Audi team to be 3.5 seconds up the road. But in this current incarnation of Formula One, which makes next year's title race potentially probably the most exciting since 2010. We have 7 drivers that can actually win a race. Can we officially say the Red Bull dominance is over?
Yeah, I mean, this is the thing. Like, people have said this to me because I've been watching other podcasts and stuff, and people said to me, "Oh, well, we didn't think at Imola it was dominance," and Max, especially when we talk about the sim racing, they're like, "Oh no, it wasn't dominance. Max only just won in Imola," but everybody was looking at at the situation of. At the situation we had in Imola and going, season's over. Yeah, Lando looks pretty quick, but he's not going to challenge for a championship. The championship is Max's. And I don't care what people say. That was the attitude we had. And this season is not over. I've said it since Imola. I don't think it is. I think we've got a championship fight. We've got 4 different... We have one even more now, because whatever happened to Red Bull in... what race would it have been? Let me just find it. If I go to Max Verstappen and look at his results, I think I would say it was after Spain.
Monaco it's Monaco after Spain, wasn't it? Yeah, because they were direct in Monaco.
Monaco, Verdaya, then Canada and Spain. He come back to win. Canada being a very good drive, especially. And then he's had a poor run of results in his standard. I'd sit there and I go, and it was sort of half confirmed over Hungary. The FAA have possibly asked Red Bull to remove something from their car for it being questionable, whether it's illegal or not or whatever.
Which we did talk about last year.
Yeah. And I understand it being... But it seems like something definitely has. I mean, no, it coincided with Adrian Newey saying he was leaving as well. But I think that has sort of covered up the idea that maybe Newey was always going to leave, and that was some news which would cover up a poor run of results from taking something off the car. Possibly. Maybe.
This is all speculation.
Yes. So do not sue me, Red Bull. If you want to sponsor me, feel free.
While he wears Mercedes shirt.
Yeah, well, But obviously, people say, oh, well, look at Perez. Perez was about, we've got so used to the second Red Bull being 4 tenths off Max. So that Max is still hitting pole position. It's just one of them things. Max, we've said he's a great driver. He's getting the best out of the car. Is the car best on the grid now? No. Is it second best on the grid? I still think it is. When it's on form. When that car's on form, it's still second best on the grid to McLaren. And we're talking margins, different. I still think Mercedes is the 3rd best. And the Ferrari, not far behind. I mean, it was in the battle throughout the Belgian Grand Prix. They are very close. But they just don't have that almost outright pace.
Ferrari have taken the wrong development path from the looks of it, because when they started the season, they looked they looked very good. They looked like a team that were going to challenge Red Bull, and for whatever reason, the development path they've gone on just hasn't worked.
Yeah.
They've got sort of the next 6-7 months to reset and find get back on the course they were on, and I think next year I'm looking forward to 2025, because I genuinely think we could potentially have 4 teams that are challenging for the world title, and again, something we've not seen since 2010 with when it was the 5 team, where it was the 5-person battle all the way to Abu Dhabi that year. But yeah, no, it's a shame that everyone decided to show up, even if the Red Bull took something off the car or whatever. It's a shame everyone decided to start showing up after Miami, or rather than at the start of the season, because you can't give someone like Max Verstappen a 7-win head start and hope to claw everything back.
Well, I would say, I've said it a few times. If Lewis Hamilton is in that Ferrari, I think that Ferrari is in a much stronger position to compete for wins. And I think that is because he can just, Charles Leclerc has shown extract the pace, he's on pole. So the pace is there, but I just think Lewis Hamilton's experience and the way he can extract something out of the car would mean he could extract a little bit more than Sainz and Leclerc is doing. But that's just a personal opinion on that. But in terms of general fight, I think we got 4. This is why the championship fight is still on. And I wouldn't turn around and say it's definitely on for Lando. Charles Leclerc, it would be very difficult to get in there, but he's still in touch and distance with Lando. So how can we say he's not? You know, if we turn around and say Lewis could be, Charles definitely.
There's 100 points between Leclerc and Verstappen. There's 127 points between Lewis. I'm not saying Lewis is in a title fight. I have categorically been saying that this world title fight is over. I've been saying it. I've been one of the few. I've been one of the people since probably Miami that has been saying it. Because I just don't think anyone is consistent enough. What do you make, quickly before we move on to the prediction results, which I'm very annoyed about? What do you make of people essentially sending for Lando every time? You know, Lando's comments about, oh well, it's easy to win when you're in the most dominant car, coming back to circulate everywhere. And now, given that the McLarens have had probably the quickest car for the last 4 or 5 races, and yet Lewis has more wins than Lando has this season, and the Mercedes team now have more wins than the McLaren outfit do this season.
I've got to say, I don't think there's a team this season. I think nobody wants to win a race this season. And I know that sounds like a weird comment, but you look, Mercedes, we know, screwed up on strategy. Ferraris, screwed up on strategies. You know, McLaren, definitely screwed up on strategies. Red Bull, screwed up on strategies, especially for Perez. You know, we don't even get into the lower teams who have screwed up strategies, like Daniel Ricciardo's in Hungary. It's a weird situation where nobody seems to be getting it right in terms of strategy. You normally get somebody who gets it right throughout the season and then maybe gets it wrong at the first race of next year. It's just a strange thing. In terms of the comments, I think we're definitely in a position that Lando is... Yeah, okay, a few years ago he made a comment, but we could go back to Lewis and say, right, okay, well, years ago he made a comment that the FIA were after him because of his skin colour. You know, didn't he, back in 2011? I think I want to say, at Monaco.
Yeah, something like that.
You know, it's things like that where it's like, we could go back and, yeah, Lando is exactly right. But I think the problem is he's coming out with a comment normally when he's absolutely pissed off because McLaren have screwed it up again. So it's very easy to take it out of context in terms of he could be sitting there in the garage going, we've got the quickest car, we should be winning races. And he's absolutely solidly bang on. You know, only Belgium, I think, we could say that McLaren should not have won in the last, well, since Miami.
6 races, 7 races.
Yeah. McLaren have been in there, and they've got to start learning quick, because why Lando is saying this is because Lando's going, I have learned to win races. I know how to win them now. I can do it. You know, we always have that doubt, always that cloud hanging over his head, especially after Russia, when he made that tyre error. But he has dominated races. He did in Russia. He has driven through fields to go into podiums. He's now won races after driving through fields. We need to see him almost dominate from the front now and win a race from the very front. That's the only thing we need. But McLaren have to pick up their game to do that. And I just think he gets... I think it's a little harsh. You know, he's never been in this position, but he sees this as his chance. Next season, like you say, we could have 8 people for World Championship. I'm suspecting Red Bull are replacing Perez before you say anything. You could have 8 people for World Championship. And if you do, Well, 7 actually, because I think it'd be unfair if Antonelli gets a Mercedes drive to expect him to jump on the bandwagon straight away, and that'll be interesting to see as well. But I do just think we've got. I think the comment bits, like you said it, you brought it up before. While he shouldn't have said it, but at that time you're putting PR pressure on Mercedes to go, you should be winning, and almost maybe feels like when he had that argument with Lewis in the cool-down room in Austria, or disagreement, or sort of snarky comments, I think that was taken out of context because obviously,
no, it was Hungary, not Austria.
In Hungary, sorry, yeah. Lando was saying something in the heat of the moment, and he thought Lewis was doing the same, being sarky, going, "Bloody hell, your car's quick. What you done to it?" And actually, Lewis was just being polite, and he's took it the wrong way. And it's something Lando's got to learn. It's still a little bit of immaturity in him, but he is still young. I mean, how old is Lando Norris? He's not massively old, as he's. Here we go. Once this website loads.
24.
Yeah, he's born in November 1999. Mika Hakkinen took his last championship when Lando was born. For you older people watching, sink that one in. But yeah, it's just he's still got that little bit of immaturity. It's absolutely fine. I don't see a problem with it. And I think just, if he continues driving how he does, the wins will come, the championship challenge will come. He's just got to drive well. And, people saying, oh, well, championship over, he got stuck behind Verstappen in Belgium. I just think it was a strange Belgium Grand Prix.
Well, with that being said, we're at the part of the show which you all love, because this is where we, as two fans of the show, show our constant expertise. Prediction results.
Yeah, so we're going to go with qualifying first.
So
we'll bring them up. Here we go. So
I had Hamilton in 5th. Nope. I had Piastri in 4th.
Nope.
I had Leclerc in 3rd.
Nope.
I had Verstappen in 2nd.
Nope.
And I had Norris in 1st.
Nope. Well, you got that one backwards. And what was mine? I had Russell.
You had Russell in 5th. You had Sainz
no.
in 4th. You had Leclerc in 3rd. You had Piastri 2nd. And you had Norris 1st.
I think we expected a little bit too much from McLaren this weekend.
Now,
definitely.
Let's do your prediction. Let's do your race predictions first. So you had Sainz in 5th.
Yeah.
You had Hamilton 4th. You had Verstappen 3rd. Piastri 2nd, which you got.
Yeah. Woo!
And you had Norris in 1st.
Yeah. I just expected after Silverstone a lot more from McLaren, and they just seemed slightly off the boil. I think what happened with McLaren, honestly, was they expected more tyre wear. Because we've seen it all season. They have a little bit of slow start to a stint, and then they move through as the race goes on. And because the tyres didn't wear down, they couldn't do that.
So for me, which is why I'm so annoyed, I had Verstappen in 5th. I had Leclerc 4th.
He was 4th. He was 3rd.
I had Piastri 3rd.
He was 2nd.
I had Hamilton 2nd.
He was 1st.
And I had Norris 1st. I had all 5 drivers, except I put one driver, except I put the driver that finished 5th in 1st, and everyone else got knocked out.
No, yeah. If the disqualification hadn't happened,
I would have gone 4.
You would have got 4 points. Yeah. Wow. But the disqualification happened,
and I got no point.
I would, if I was you, I would send George Russell 1.5 kilos of potatoes to stick in his car next time.
Yeah, that's why I want to do my predictions last, and that's why, because I've been saying to Dave that I was fairly annoyed with how my predictions turned out, and that's why. Yeah.
If I remember rightly, my predictions were that Williams would be sacking Sargent. Well, Sainz is coming in just afterwards, so Kind of, but he's
yeah,
got the rest of the season. And Albon would be my surprise. Albon finishing 12th, so probably not. But he was up there for quite a bit of a race. I can't remember what yours was.
I think I had. Who did I have as my surprise? I don't remember. I had Checo as my surprise.
Yeah.
I
Well,
guess
he did surprise us. He put it on front row.
I guess qualifying was a surprise. His race wasn't a surprise. And I forgot what my other one was. I need to start writing it down in Discord.
Yeah. But in general, that didn't quite go to plan. I think we've got to start very quickly. Your star of the race, or is it start of the weekend, shall we say?
That's interesting. So did you know what? Because he got disqualified, but it was a fantastic drive, George Russell. Because he did cross the line first. He might not have officially finished first, but he did cross the line first. It was a phenomenal drive. 30 laps on those hard tires. Yes, kept Hamilton at bay for however you can talk about the strategy and stuff like that. But no, it was a phenomenal drive.
Yeah, I'll take that. My star of the weekend, I am going to actually go for... I'm going to go for Charles Leclerc. I think Oscar probably did what he should have done, and if he hadn't had a shot at pits, he may have had a chance of winning that race because he was closing in there at the end. But Charles, I think we can say a quiet weekend for Ferrari. We didn't really notice them. They were thereabouts. I mean, Carlos was only 20 seconds off the pace in the end, and he started on completely contra strategy. And Charles was 8 seconds off the lead. I mean, it wasn't a shabby weekend, was it? You know, it was decent.
But the Charles Leclerc can't convert a pole position to a win. That continues, unfortunately.
Hey, it's better than Lando's can't convert a pole position to a lap one lead. And at least Charles can lead.
And I'll let you go for your dunce of the weekend.
I think firstly, whoever was weighing the Mercedes, that's certainly one. But I think I've got to say, probably Yuki Tsunoda. I didn't see a huge amount of pace from him this weekend. Took the 60th place penalty, started round at Stavolo to start the race and gained all the positions on the opening lap. But yeah, just... Actually, no, I'm going to go Zhou Guanyu. Absolutely nowhere this weekend.
He's been nowhere all year, in fairness.
Yeah, but Bottas actually looked like he might score a point at times this weekend, whereas Zhou is not helping his case for the 2025 drive. Yourself?
Red Bull. There's a massive chance that you're not going to win the Constructors' title anymore. From what looked like a short thing. Cool, I think the drivers is over personally, but the constructors, there's only let me just get the banner back up. Sorry.
I've also got to say, just while you're doing that,
in
terms of Red Bull, who else I mean, we could say hands up in the chat, but who else expected Perez to put those soft tyres on him and not get fastest lap? I just had it in my head when he pitted. I was like, oh, please just get it. Just for your career is over if you do not get that.
So as we say, there's 42 points between them and McLaren. There's an extra 21 points between them and Ferrari. Red Bull now go to weekends where they're not the quickest car at the track anymore. No. They now go to weekend, and I'm pretty sure Checo's got an engine penalty coming sometime soon as well.
Probably Monza.
So that'll be another race where he scores about 2 points. I think, as much as I'm, they're scared of the outcries they're going to get in Mexico. Mm-hmm. That's the decision that I think is going to cost them the constructors' title. I don't know to who at this moment in time, but I think that's the decision that's going to cost them a fourth straight constructors title.
Yeah, no, I pretty much agree with that.
Yeah, so they are my dunce of the weekend.
Yeah, that is the case, and that was the Belgian Grand Prix result. We've managed to keep it down to 67 minutes this time because we haven't had to evaluate some collisions because nobody got alongside each other, so it didn't matter. Weirdest Belgian Grand Prix ever, I think, in terms of just everybody sort of following each other. There's normally loads of overtaking, etc. Also, a shout out to Fernando Alonso, one-stop strategy, made it work, didn't come in underweight, 8th place. Esteban Ocon 9th, and obviously with disqualification, giving Daniel Ricciardo a point in the championship, which obviously I think then, dare I say it, puts him, well, it does put him closer to Yuki. It puts him 10 points behind Yuki now.
10 points behind Yuki.
And 10 points behind Nico Hulkenberg, who we know is going to Audi. So we have the summer break now. You would think you'd get rid of us, but no, we're staying around. We've got a few things on the horizon. We'll obviously be looking back at the first half of this season. That may be in 2 parts because obviously it's quite difficult to go through as many F1 races as there is NASCAR races. Then we will be also doing a half-term review and look forward and a preview to Zandvoort. That'll be near the end of the 3-week break. What else did we think of bringing in?
There was something else.
There possibly.
We do have a list. We do have a list of sort of videos and ideas.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think so that people get excited for them if they're even going to do that. What else did we say? Where's that list you sent me? Wasn't that long ago, was it?
No, it wasn't. The problem we communicate.
Problem is we've got so many things where we've gone like, what time?
We also communicate a lot more on Discord than I think we like to believe.
But yeah, if you've got any ideas for shows you'd like to see, let us know. We might have a look back at the F2, F3 season because F3 finishes at Monza. And I know somebody who I'm thinking to bring on to join us for that because he's very knowledgeable on the F3 series, which is currently being led by one of the drivers who hasn't won a race this season. And we've had about 10 different winners. So it's a competitive series down there, unlike F2, which is just like, I don't know what's going on in F2 this season. But that's about it. I can't think of anything else. We've got loads of ideas, as I say. I need to, which for some reason has just reminded me, I need to renew my driving license. I don't know why that's come up, but yeah. Everybody,
yeah.
Wajid, thank you.
No, thank you. Thank you as always, my friend.
And thank you everybody out there, as we always say, for the support. We actually got a huge amount of views on the last video, so let's keep it going. Let's keep it pushing. And hopefully one day you'll see Grid Talk doing their own little talk on the grid. Yeah, okay, let's not push it. Wajid, thank you. And we will see everybody very, very shortly for the next video. When I say shortly, I don't mean this afternoon. Don't push it. See you all soon.